I had great trouble. I think that they were horrified that I was going to take this on. I didn't really belong there. I have to say, they could not have been meaner.
How did a movie that began life as a humble Star Trek spoof come to be recognized as a much-loved cult classic by both fans and critics? There are battles, tales, and mysteries hidden beneath the action and jokes that only the cast were privy to. Discover what the majority of the fans were not aware of concerning Galaxy Quest, from Sigourney Weaver's battle for maintaining her character's heart to the issues that ensured it was more than a comedy. Are you ready to begin? Let's get going. The making of Galaxy Quest is today a popular cult film, but it was not always destined to be so popular. In reality, the film struggled to even get produced before it was released in theaters. The studios initially rejected the tale because it was too niche. The script was a satirical take on Star Trek and the universe of science fiction fans. The film contained in-jokes and sci-fi references, which did not make the large corporations want to produce it. They were scared that not many people would understand the jokes or appreciate the homage to the genre. And let's be frank, a comedy that mocked something as niche as Star Trek was not necessarily viewed as a guaranteed hit. When the companies were producing Galaxy Quest, they lost sight that it was more than a copy. It wasn't mocking sci-fi, it was celebrating it. The plot of the film was an excellent combination of biting satire and genuine affection for the genre that it was satirizing. The humor did not mock the fans or the creators of the show. Instead, it was a fan letter to the exact things that make sci-fi fascinating, the absurd things that occur, the friendships, the sweeping ideas, and the intense emotional connections that one feels with their favorite characters. The company didn't understand that initially, however. They lost the message of the story because they were concentrating on how to market it to as many individuals as possible. Sigourney Weaver, however, recognized immediately how wonderful the writing was. Galaxy Quest was no campy comedy for her. It was an examination of how creators consume, fans fanboy, celebrities respond, and shows that mean so much to them. She knew that the script was more than a Star Trek parody and that there was a special message within. The film was a reflection on actors who are typecasted by a role they've been in and the way that the characters of theirs still have merit even when they're in absurd circumstances. Weaver had some very significant ideas that helped to bring the film into being. She struggled to maintain the integrity of the script, and although the studio wasn't sure about the film at that point, she saw its potential. That was more than jokes and pop culture stuff. It was about the real story of a real person. She knew that Galaxy Quest had something to reach people on a level above the genre, and she fought hard to maintain the film's heart when the studio was attempting to make it more mainstream. The turning point came when Tim Allen became a part of the team. Allen was riding high at the time on home improvement success, and the studio viewed him as a huge draw for the public. They believed that because his name was associated with it, the film would stand some likelihood of success. Everything changed once Allen came on board. He was aware of the same things that Weaver was of the topic. He understood Galaxy Quest was not another geek comedy. It was a film that enjoyed sci-fi fans and mocked the way ridiculous the genre was. Although the company considered the film just a geek comedy, Allen believed the script had potential beyond the genre. He accepted to make the film because he believed it was going to be great. His decision to be involved in it was highly significant in bringing the movie to fruition. It convinced the studio that Galaxy Quest actually did have the potential to appeal to a broader audience, although they were concerned about how specialized the script was. More critical still that Allen portrayed the role of Jason Nesmith genuinely. Nesmith is a television actor of the past who must confront his own history and become the hero of which he portrayed one on television. Allen's performance was much of what made the film succeed, both as a comedy and as one of redemption and maturation. Jason Nesmith's character development was convincing and easy to connect with due to his timing, charm, and ability to get the balance right between humor and emotion. In part 2 coming up, we will discuss the key scenes that made the film iconic. This journey was not yet complete. From Sigourney Weaver's significant struggle for Gwen's character development to Galaxy Quest's continuing influence on sci-fi films and fans. Sigourney Weaver's battle for the heart of the movie Galaxy Quest was not only a comedy. It was a clever combination of humor, affection for sci-fi, and homage to the genre. It might not have happened at all, but one of the most vital elements of the film did. The classic Chompers scene with slam pistons and a deadly machine mouth attempting to gnash the characters up was slated for cutting. Why? DreamWorks didn't approve of it because they felt that it was too ridiculous, too crazy, and didn't suit the tone of the movie. That was not going to occur, however, Sigourney Weaver. It wasn't slapstick comedy alone when her character, Gwen DeMarco, went full-on ballistic in that scene. It was an instant of sheer, cathartic self-knowledge. Gwen was not alone among actresses who were offended by their roles. Weaver and all the other actresses who have ever felt constrained by what Hollywood will accept of them were offended. It was a departure from the stupid nonsense that illustrated how difficult it is for Gwen to be anything other than the hot girl on a sci-fi television show. What Weaver did in this scene was not simply act her role. She fought for her character and every female who had been excluded from the genre previously. DreamWorks didn't appreciate it, however. The studio believed it was far too much. They didn't understand that this wasn't simply another ridiculous joke, but a climax in the emotional complexity of the film. Weaver realized that, and so she fought hard to ensure it remained in the film. She knew that line wasn't a humorous overreaction. It was Gwen as a character explaining to the audience exactly how she felt about being stereotyped and reduced to a shallow place. There was more than one thing that Gwen was angry about. She was angry at the system that had placed her in that place. They didn't only desire to preserve one line. They also desired to ensure the film remained faithful to the sentiments of performers, particularly women, who were stuck in their roles in sci-fi or action films. Weaver did not solely battle for one scene for her character's dialogue. She battled to have the narrative represent the true challenges of women who have felt marginalized in a male-dominated industry. One of the most human and realistic moments of the film was when the character broke down and distanced himself from the expectations and absurdity of the scenario. Gwen was in a difficult situation, and Galaxy Quest was also undergoing a major transformation. It didn't mock the genre. Instead, it complemented it. Its actors, its fans, and its enduring influence on popular culture were all celebrated. The central concept of the film, which was about the humanity of science fiction, was exemplified here. It was not merely about space battles and aliens, but also about the actors who portrayed them and the audience who continued the tales. There was more work for Weaver to do than in one scene. She viewed the entire film as an opportunity to voice for women in the industry, particularly in science fiction, which is regularly criticized for making females appear as nothing more than accessories. Gwen DeMarco wasn't another stereotype. She was a woman employed in an industry where individuals didn't necessarily take her seriously. Sigourney Weaver understood that allowing Gwen's frustration to be voiced was more than a plot device. It was honesty. She wasn't about to allow Galaxy Quest to keep secrets from her. It was not simply a spoof film about Star Trek or Star Trek enthusiasts. Appreciate the distinctive flavor of the genre and explore what it is like to be part of something greater than yourself, even if that something is annoying or restrictive. Weaver was able to immediately perceive what the story was actually about. It wasn't sufficient to laugh at how ridiculous space operas were. Other people laughed with them and adored their position in pop culture. But Galaxy Quest wasn't simply humorous because it was a parody. It was touching too, because it was genuine. When the cast labored to create these characters in ways not in the script, it became genuine. Weaver understood that the film about Gwen DeMarco had to reveal beyond the humor and chaos on the surface. It needed to express the struggle of every actress who has ever been dissatisfied with the roles they were assigned. "I have one job on this lousy ship" wasn't humorous rhetoric. It was how Gwen expressed who she was. It wasn't simply a supporting role for her. She mattered, and Weaver deeply understood that because she, too, had been a typecast individual. But what set Galaxy Quest apart was the way that all of these various elements gelled together. It wasn't just about mocking how ridiculous the genre was, but also about giving it a show of respect. It wasn't simply making fun of Star Trek. It was a means of paying homage to the fans and the actors who were forever associated with these roles. Not only were they mocking the ridiculousness of some of these shows, but they were also acknowledging how much people cared about them. Weaver worked diligently to ensure the film wasn't simply another forgettable spoof because he cared so much for it. She understood that the tale was good because it could be loving and cruel, and that it did have heart without sacrificing humor. And because of that, Galaxy Quest was not only a humorous film, it was sad, tragic, and at times incredibly profound. But the movie was excellent beyond its criticism and humor. In fact, what made Galaxy Quest excellent was watching how the personalities shifted, particularly Tim Allen's Jason Nesmith. The actor, long past his prime, needed to shift from a cocky, self-absorbed jerk to an actual leader who could come through when it mattered most. It wasn't simply the result of story points. It was also the result of problems the cast had in real life. They needed to create their own moments of growth in a film that was as much about them as their characters. Stay tuned, because what ensued next altered everything for these characters, and it may alter everything you believed you understood about Galaxy Quest. The special challenge of parodying science fiction Galaxy Quest was not just a joke. Treading the thin line between love and satire, fun and heart, was akin to walking a tightrope. It came across as a humorous portrayal of the world of the sci-fi crowd initially, but there was a whole lot more to it than that. The cast, headed by Sigourney Weaver, had to create a film which respected and valued science fiction and did not mock it in a derogatory manner. They did it without vilifying anybody. They simply reveled in the goofy aspects of the genre while still respectfully paying homage to its origins. Sci-fi television programs like Star Trek have had loyal followers for decades. But while it's simple enough to mock the hypertech exposition or hyperheroics, Galaxy Quest managed to make them adorable. The stars didn't simply ridicule the kind of films they enjoyed. It was apparent to them that they understood. The question? How do you parody a sci-fi series without ridiculing the viewers who watch these shows constantly? Gwen DeMarco, as played by Sigourney Weaver, was the epitome of this struggle. Not only did she understand the joke, she was the joke initially. That actress had been trapped in a role that relegated her to being the token female in a sci-fi series. But when actual danger arrives at the Galaxy Quest crew, she finally speaks up. This is how she characterizes the main concept of the movie. Sci-fi geeks will chuckle at the cheesy lines and goofy tech, but they adore it just the same. The actors were not alone in their awareness of the importance of this balance. Dean Parasot, the director of the movie, knew immediately that the movie had to balance a multitude of things. It would lose its heart if it were too much fun at the expense of a genre. It would lose its edge, however, if it played everything too straight. Parasot collaborated with Weaver, Allen, Rickman, and the rest of the cast to ensure that the humor never became too pointed. They were aware that although parody is humorous, individuals would be able to determine whether it was performed with love or, worse still, out of resentment. They did not undertake this as a joke, but rather as a love letter to all that was wonderful regarding sci-fi. The ridiculous spaceship with malfunctioning equipment, the endless battles with excessively villainous villains, and the epic monologues were all handled with the same respect as any mainstream sci-fi film. This wasn't merely a spoof of bad writing or bizarre plot twists. It was embracing those elements and saying, this is why we love sci-fi so much.